Hey, what's going on, everyone? Dan Wanis here with the Daily Fantasy Press. I hope you guys enjoyed the Masters event this last weekend. It never gets old. Such a great event and tradition, and it's just something special to watch and to have a playoff between Sergio and Justin Rose. That was just a cherry on top there, and it was just a perfect ending to the weekend. Big congrats to Sergio. He finally got that first major. There was some doubt as to whether he would ever get a major, and he even mentioned it. He's mentioned it previously at the Masters. Like does not think he was ever set up to win the event. But it seems like we have a new Sergio this year. He's getting married. He's got his life together, and now he's got that first major under his belt. So once again, congrats to Sergio. Wednesday was quite the day with the breaking news of Dustin Johnson. I'm sure all of you guys were left scrambling with the rest of us, trying to decide, did you want to leave him in some lineups, fade him outright, and just assess the situation. But I have to say, um, a big props to Dustin Johnson's agent for coming out and releasing the news prior to lineup lock. I know so many times in DFS we're stuck with late breaking news or breaking news after lock, and there's nothing you can do about it. But I think all of us are very appreciative that DJ's agent came out and said what had happened, and at that point, it's a decision up to you of how much risk or reward you want to take with playing them. So, and in this case, for those that played them, it didn't pan out. But we all had the information available, and that's all you can ask for. Um, so moving on, we have some exciting news at Daily Fantasy Press this week. We have a new player model on our website. And what we're really trying to achieve with this model is it's going to be changing weekly and catering to the course of the event, the history of it, some of the key statistics, and specifically, we'll be picking our top four statistics that are going to be driving this model. And from there, it will provide a player model for DraftKings and FanDuel. So be sure to check it out. It's one of many steps we see in the future at Daily Fantasy Press to really propel us out there and give you guys an edge. So take a look at this week for the RBC Heritage. And with that, let's get a dive into the RBC event this weekend at Hilton Head, South Carolina.
So let's take a dive into the course here. So we have the Sea Pines Resort at Harbour Golf Links. It's a par 71 playing at 7,100 yards. Sea Pines Resort is a course designed by Pete Dye. And with Pete Dye courses, we typically see much more strategic and shorter length courses than a lot of the courses played on tour. So it definitely requires some strategy off the tee into the approach, with it being a tighter track. This is definitely considered one of the favorite events for some of the guys on tour. Matthew Fitzpatrick, he tweeted out today a picture of him arriving at the course, and this is an event he likes. Now, some of the defending champions, last year's champion was Brandon Grace, Jim Furyk the year before that, Matt Kuchar, he's a two-time winner, and Graham McDowell, all being previous winners here at the RBC Heritage. Now, let's take a deeper dive into the course. Harbour Town is set on the ocean, and wind can definitely play a factor and has been certain years at this course. We're going to look at weather here in a second, but it doesn't look like the wind speeds are going to be anywhere near what we dealt with last week at the Masters. But like I said, we'll get there shortly. There's a mix of holes on this course. There's 11 par 4s, 4 par 3s, and 3 par 5s. Now, the fairways are very narrow and heavily wooded with trees all along the fairways on majority of these holes. So picking accurate players is definitely going to be important. Bermuda greens we have this week, so you're going to want to target guys that putt well on Bermuda. Something to keep in mind is last fall, Hurricane Matthew came through and just devastated Harbour Town. And the course lost some trees. They had some damage along the coastline. So that's something to keep in mind. I know people are really going to rely on driving accuracy as a key metric this week. And I think it's definitely going to be important. But on certain holes, there may be some openings that haven't been there in years past because of the hurricane. And there were quite a few trees that were taken out with that. So it's known as a very tight course. It may not play as tight, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. And to go back with the greens, they have very small square footage of greens here. It's actually the smallest on tour. Greens are going to be playing much slower than last weekend at the Masters as well. So we should not be seeing as many three putts and just disaster of a putting show that we saw last year with some guys at Augusta. And something else to keep in mind at this course, Harbour Town, they have the iconic red and white lighthouse. That's pretty cool. And they also, if you guys don't know, they have a jacket given to the winner at this event. It's a plaid jacket, much different and a lot different meaning than the Masters green jacket, but just something else to mention. Now look at some of the stats this week. Greens in regulation are going to be crucial this week with those smaller greens. You want guys that can hit those greens in regulation and give themselves birdie opportunities. Like I said, driving accuracy, that's going to be a key metric this week with the narrow fairways. Scrambling, if players are not hitting the greens, I want them to scramble and be able to get up and down for par and avoid the bogeys. Par 4 scoring, par 4s play tough, so you want to target guys that can score on the par 4s. Proximity, I'm looking at proximity from 175 to 200 yards. And lastly, strokes gained tee to green. I always love this stat, and it's been really beneficial this year. Just keeping that in mind. Now looking at the weather, I put up the wind forecast here just for Wednesday and Thursday. I'm recording here on Monday night, so a lot is going to change by Thursday and even Friday. But initial wind reports are Thursday morning, it looks like we're not going to have wind over 7-8 miles per hour in the morning. And by late afternoon, it only gets up to 10 miles per hour. And gusts don't even get above 13 miles per hour. So I don't think there's going to be as big of an advantage morning versus afternoon as we saw last week at the Masters, but we will keep an eye on this. As for temps and precipitation, they look perfect. 75 degrees Thursday and mostly sunny. Same with Friday and Saturday and Sunday as well. So nothing to worry about for weather, which is always nice. When we do have an edge though in weather, I love playing those weekends, especially with the new FanDuel format. Last weekend at the Masters, taking all the studs in 3 and 4 was in rounds 3 and 4 was definitely the way to go, just because scoring opportunities on Thursday and Friday and those heavy wind gusts were just, it was so minimal for scoring opportunities. So weather definitely plays an edge when the opportunity is there. I just don't think this week is a week to attack that. So let's look at scrambling as one of the key statistics we're looking at this week. Bill Haas, he comes in first in the field ranking this week for guys playing at the RBC Heritage. He's at 9,100 on DraftKings. He finished third at WGC Match Play. He's been in good form this year and has always been known as a scrambler. So I like him this week. Second, we have Adam Hadwin here at 8,800. You guys all know he won at Valspar. And I thought he had a solid showing for his first appearance at the Masters. I don't have high expectations for a lot of the first timers at Augusta. It's a course that requires a lot of practice and getting to know it. So I thought he played great last week, and I'm curious where he comes in at ownership this week. Next, John Peterson at 6,900. He's popping in my models this week, and I'm going to get into more of him a little later. John Huh, he's coming in at 6,900. He finished T3rd in 2014 here. Next, we have Matt Kuchar at 11,500. I've already mentioned Kuchar's a two-time champion. I don't think I have to talk much more about him. I think he's going to be really highly owned this week, especially after that hole-in-one he got at Augusta on Sunday. So everybody saw that. And lastly, Ches Reavie at 6,800. He's a guy that seems to always pop on my Fantasy Labs model. So he's coming in there for at 12th on tour in scrambling. Next, we have greens and regulation. Kyle Stanley coming in at 5th on tour in greens and regulation. Stanley checks a lot of the boxes for me this week, and I'm really liking his price and everything about his game to match up well here. Second on the list, we have Billy Horschel at 7,600. He's been having an up and down year this year. It seems like every week he's being talked up, he flops and has just not gotten it together. So, especially during the Florida swing, a lot of guys were on him. He's a Florida guy, so puts well on Bermuda. So I think it's a guy you can go back and target this week. Third on the list, Lucas Glover at 7,200. He ranks 7th on tour in greens and regulation. This guy can be so tilting to follow on Shot Tracker. He'll stick a shot from 200 yards out within 6 feet of the pin and somehow manage to 3-putt it. So if he can get his putter going this week, he's a guy I'm gonna definitely have some shares. Fourth on the list, DA Points at 7,200. DA Points just won the Puerto Rico Open. So I like that. He's popping as well in models. So he's got good recent form going on here. And I think his game matches up well. Then we have Jim Herman, and lastly, John Peterson at 6,900. Peterson, I mentioned him in scrambling. He was ranked 8th in scrambling on tour, and he's ranked 15th in greens and regulation. So he is a guy that's checking some of the boxes here this week for stats we're keying up on. And lastly, we have strokes gained tee to green. Kyle Stanley, again, coming in first in the field this week in this category, and Lucas Glover right behind him. And then third, we have Kevin Kisner. He was a guy last week at the Masters. A lot of touts were talking up. and I think he let some people down. At 9,700, I think his price is about fair. I think he's a guy you might be able to get at lower ownership this week. And next, Shane Lowry. We were on him last week, especially as a win specialist, with the winds flaring up at the Masters. He had 2 great days and one just complete blow up at Augusta. Overall, I thought he played really well. And he's going to be a guy I go right back to. At 7,500, that's a great price for him. Next, Francesco Molinari. Last week, I really wanted to see how his wrist held up. It looks like everything was fine with it. He didn't have any issues. He's priced at 8,600. I think that's fair price for him. And lastly, Luke List. He's ranked 18th in strokes gained tee to green, and we all know him as a bomber. And I think we might be able to get him at low ownership this week. Even though he's known as a bomber, he'll be able to club down this week and really keep his accuracy within check, but also he's going to be out hitting these guys. So I like Luke List this week. He's had a great year, and I want to ride the wave with him. Now let's look at 3 course horses here for the tournament this week. First, Luke Donald. When you look at this guy's course history, it's incredible. He's had 7 of 7 cuts made, and he has 5 top 3 finishes here. That is, just insane. And coming into this, I think this year he's been in decent form. He finished 23rd at Pebble Beach, 17th at Genesis, and 27th at Honda. He had the week off leading up to this event. He didn't play at the Masters. So at 7,800, I like Luke Donald this week. Jason Duffner, he's been a guy this year that has played really well. He's at 8,500. He has 7 of 7 cuts made also, and 3 top 25 finishes. And like I said, he's been in great form this year, and he checks all the boxes you want here at Harbour Town. And lastly, Charlie Hoffman, 8,700. He was playing out of his mind at Augusta. It seems like this time of the year is where he plays well. Like around these Texas events, he's played well at the Masters, and now we have a course where you just have to be accurate. And I think Charlie Hoffman, he checks those boxes. He's made 6 of 6 cuts, 3 top 15 finishes. And like I said, he's in good recent form. So I think Charlie at 8,700, that's a fair price for him. Now let's look at GPP Plays of the Week here. I mentioned Shane Lowry earlier at 7,500. His price is just so good on DraftKings, and he doesn't seem to be like a guy that's owned week to week. His strokes gain off the tee is 8th on tour. His approach, he's ranked 19th. He's ranked 11th in strokes gained tee to green, and he's actually ranked 1st in scrambling from the fringe. And I normally don't look at scrambling from the fringe, but in a week like this where you do have smaller greens, if he's going to miss, he's going to be right around it. So I really like the boxes he's checking off this week, and at 7,500, that's a great price. Next, I've been talking about him on this podcast, Kyle Stanley, 7,200. He finished 33rd here last year, and he's coming off an 8th place finish at Shell, 17th at Arnold Palmer, and 27th at Valspar. And with his strokes gained tee to green, he's 6th on tour in that category. And then greens and regulation, he's ranked 5th on tour. So everything is pointing to playing Stanley this week. 7,200. I think there's a ton of guys in that price range, and he could get overlooked. And lastly, John Peterson, another guy that's checking the boxes this week, 6,900. And like I just said about Stanley, there's a ton of guys in this price range, and they're just bound to get overlooked. Peterson, he's ranked 15th in greens and regulation, 69th in strokes gained approach, 29th in strokes gained off the tee, 31st in driving accuracy. So I think he's got everything it takes to play here and definitely make the cut. So those are my 3 GPP plays of the week. And that wraps it up for this podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give us a thumbs up. For those new listeners, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get notified weekly of when we release this podcast. And like I said about our new player model, check it out, dailyfantasypress.com. And we're really excited about it and really hoping you guys can take this information and really be profitable in daily fantasy PGA. It's a fun sport. It's growing rapidly, and I think there's a reason for it. So once again, good luck this week to you guys, and hope to see you all at the top of the leaderboards.